Hello and welcome to another episode on Spiritual Advice from a Barbarian, Lunatic. And I'm here to tell you about rule number 1 in spirituality or sadhana or doing anything that you'd ever want to do. And that is, don't be lazy. And whatever you have to do to stop being lazy, you just have to fucking do it. So, I'm just in the middle because I don't want to talk to you how much I don't want to do all the stuff that I feel like doing. No, I want to show you what I've actually done. And today there is a destination. And because the sun is going down a bit, I had the feeling I really wanted to film myself. And there were all kinds of fantasies that I could have lived in today. And one of these fantasies is I'm gonna be really rich really soon, and then I can make these videos in a better place. But the truth is that whatever you do, there is no better place. It's always just the place where you are in the moment that you find yourself wishing you would be somewhere else. I cannot really say whether that makes sense or not. All I can say is that yesterday I smoked a giant herbal cigarette, and whatever herbs are in there, I can't really say, but I know there was thyme in there. Time also, of course, was a bit distorted. I was living in the fantasy that everything is really fast, while I realized when I was smoking that herbal cigarette that time suddenly started to stretch out. And suddenly an entire night shifted from coffee, I have no time consciousness into whoa, right, everything's kind of chilled out and relaxing, which is just a different mindset. And when you're walking in this kind of life, and you may realize that there are all kinds of roads, and it's like really loud and noisy, and like people are rushing past to get wherever they think they need to be. And then you keep walking and you think, what the fuck is going on? I mean, even my voice has changed because now I'm talking a bit different. And maybe I was talking like really like rah, because I wanted to make sure that people stay off my back. But actually what I want is that people climb onto my back, that we can finally ascend to the next level of society. And that's like Christ talking, if you know what I mean. I mean, if you understand who Christ was and what Christ is, then I'm sure you have no trouble to see me as an extension of that, right? And if you have a problem with that, I can always say, go fuck yourself, right? Because that's just how it is. If you reject me, I'll reject you, right? So if you come to me with open arms and without all your stupid preoccupations and fear, right, we can live a happy life alongside each other. But you don't seem to want to do that. So what I have to do is show you the middle finger and tell you that all these streets and cities and cars, it's all really unnecessary, and maybe it helped us to grow, but now it's making us weak, because growth is absolutely pointless if there is no destination for growth. Like, we are building the Tower of Babel, and the more we grow, the less we will be able to understand each other unless we go back to the growth on the inside, which is not so much growth. It's more like accepting that there's a lot of room on the inside and that there's no need to do all sorts of crazy things on the outside. And that means all the digging that we've been doing in the earth, we should have been doing in ourselves, and then our frustration could have gone down the drain rather than clogging it up. Right, I'm not here to make sense, and that's something I had to learn because society claims to make sense, And in Germany, society claims to equal sense, because they say, you know, you don't say Sinn machen because that's English. You say, you know, you say it equals sense. So they say, right, you have a certain set of variables, and because these variables are like this, it equals sense. And then they have the feeling that what they are doing equals sense, because they think that's better than making sense yourself, because if you make sense yourself, you can't cling to it once you know that you were the ones that tried to make sense of something that makes no sense at the same time as it makes sense. And that's as interesting as it is complete bullshit. So, right, if you have the time to watch all kinds of junk on the internet, you may also take the time to watch me, because I don't make sense, I am sense, and in a sense that's very sensible. And sense itself is basically actually, you know, just a feeling. Because what we did say, right, something feels true, something feels wrong. Sense is the way sense is, and if you've made sense, right, you have to let it go, because sense only makes sense for one instance, and afterwards it makes sense no longer. That's how I usually feel about life in general, and that's how things generally feel in life. Sometimes things make a lot of sense, and after they have started making sense, right, and I start clinging to the sense, I start going insane, because I realize, holy shit, it makes no sense at all. That's the transition that I'm walking through all my life. I come from sense into nonsense, and in between there's like some kind of loose madness, and then it's like, holy shit, it makes sense, and then it makes no sense, it makes sense, it makes no sense. And you know, that's most sense, like that's sensible. I mean, because it's a feeling, and as I'm going through my emotions, sometimes some things make sense because I felt like it for a while, and then I stopped questioning these emotions. I just accepted them, such as, you know, I feel shit, I feel terrible. You know, that's a state of mind. That's the way I feel right now, but maybe tomorrow I could feel different. So I have to get there, and no longer must I talk with a very, very dark voice so that people take me serious, because I think I can take myself serious enough to be crazy, right? Because that's what I am in a sense, and also not. And the reason why the cars are so loud is because they're trying to make music, but nobody understands them. And that's really the reality of cars. They're really trying to make music, but we all think they're supposed to transport us. And that makes cars really uncomfortable. You know, some have been given like a much louder voice than others, and some are being used much more than others, but generally cars are just there to make music. And when you start listening to the music of your car, you might also start listening to the music of your body, because that's the car of your soul. If that makes no sense, maybe you have to think about it a bit, because it does make absolute sense to me. And the funny thing is, if I would be walking around without a camera, people would think I'm crazy, but because I'm filming myself, they think I generally make sense. And that's kind of weird. And sometimes I see people and they smile, and then I feel uncomfortable. And sometimes I see people and they do all kinds of things, and well, I seem to have found a place in myself that feels more like heaven. And the reason why that has happened is because I started to listen to what makes sense to me. And that's a much more fun way of living in this kind of world than what most people are doing, because most people are trying to cling to the sense that others have made, right? Because others feel like you ought to do certain things. I don't know why, but the term vaccination just like jumped through my mind, you know. I don't know where that came from. I can't connect it to what I was saying before, But you know, sometimes people are trying to get you to do things because to them it makes sense, right? To them it might make sense to sell you a product, even if it is for selfish reasons, so that they can make money. And that may make absolute sense for them, but for me it might make no sense whatsoever. And if you like things like that, I don't know, maybe watch that movie Mary and Max, or Why Sheep or something Shrink When It Rains, or Do Sheep Shrink When It Rains. Like, that's a very nice movie, and I have the feeling there is some sort of capacity for growth, like inner growth or something, or maybe mental growth. And then we get back to the topic of psychedelics, but I'm not gonna say a lot to that unless you want to hear it, because I've said it already all. And now it makes sense and it makes no sense, and people generally like people who are not afraid to be crazy. And to me, crazy is just a word, but what it really is a feeling. It's like, hey, nature's really crazy. Anybody who wants to say something else, you know, doesn't know jack shit about anything, just like me. So if nature's crazy, I must be crazy, because I try living in this fucking world and be happy. And that's somewhat something that I feel like is like entirely like completely like crazy.